Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me today as we discuss the concept of male allies to the gender equality journey. You know, often people think of gender equality as a problem that women are interested in and something that women should bother with. So today's discussion is to kind of understand whether this is so or not, and why it matters that we have male allies. I'll start with an anecdote. So a few months ago, I was guest teaching at GIMPA, and I drove up to the staff gate. And I don't have a staff sticker because I was only a guest lecturer there. And the security asked me what I was coming to do there. I told him I was coming to teach. He asked me what, I said law, and he asked my name, and I said Professor Mensa-Bonsu. And he burst into laughter. And he said, "A woman taking professor." He was so tickled, he didn't bother to verify whether it was true. He just let me get in because a woman taking professor. But then I thought about that, and it struck me, what are his daughter's horizons when he himself thinks it is hysterical that there's a woman taking professor? So today we're going to have a discussion on male allies to the gender equality journey. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining me. And I'll start by asking a sort of obvious question. What would a male ally to this cause be? And what would they do? What's the point in them?
So, for me, a male, because, let me put it this way, because the whole issue about gender equality and advocacy generally have been led by women, a male ally is a male who has decided to join that advocacy. And as it were, is making that fight with women. And we do quite a number of things. Starting from wherever you are, as much as possible, set the systems in place to ensure that you are living what you preach, and that advocacy and that equality and equity works in that environment. And I like to live by practice. I'm a founder of a law firm, and the managing partner is a female. The deputy managing partner is a female. And it's because the systems in place allow that equity for people with merit to be able to rise to the best of their ability. So I think that's what a male ally should do, adapt all the kind of systems that give equity to everybody to be able to reach the peak of that person's career.
Thank you, David. I'll ask Edem next, because he's my next male. What does he and you envision a male ally to be for our
So I'll
cause?
piggyback on what David said, but I think another thing is you also have to be supportive. So I got exposed to the concept of mansplaining by my wife. And so what I try to do now is not just walk the walk, talk the talk, but also know when to keep quiet. Know when to keep quiet as much as possible, allow gender equality to reach its equilibrium. But then if you realize that you need to step in, then you step in. So it's walk the walk, talk the talk, and know when to keep quiet.
I love that. A friend of my husband says there's nothing that annoys her more than when a man says to her about his partner, we're having a baby. Oh no, we're pregnant. We're having a baby is fine. It's we're pregnant. That's not, because she says, and before that, were we menstruating? So, thank you, Edem. It's really important for male allies to know when to keep quiet. Adelaide, as a female yourself in the process, in this cause, what do you look for in a male ally, and what do you think their use could be to our cause?
Well, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I find it a particular privilege that I find myself on this male ally panel, and I'm sure there's a lot of pressure to speak on behalf of other women. I also want to take the opportunity to congratulate the Institute on their commendable work of research, and really amplifying this message of gender equality means a lot, I'm sure, to all of us here. When I think of a male ally, I'll say that a male ally is one that supports the progress, the empowerment, the success of women, you can easily identify them because of their commitment to justice and fairness. They refuse to tolerate discrimination, harassment, unequal pay, and go out of their way to support the promotion of gender equality. I think very importantly, a male ally also recognizes and acknowledges their privilege and use their privilege for the betterment of others. And you find that they are willing to accept feedback, they are ready to be accountable, and will do everything within their power to support the cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Adelaide. Everything in their power. Let me remind you, everything in their power, not some things in their power, everything in their power. So Edem, why should men who don't have 5 daughters be involved in advocating for gender equality? Why should they care?
So, can I take the question and flip it? Why should men not be allies? For me, representation is key. Yes, I also have 2 daughters, so it's not 5, so the pressure on me is not as much. But I come from a family of strong women. My mom was strong, her sister's strong, my sister's strong. And so I learned to be able to fit in with strong women. What Adelaide said actually resonates with me. So I realized that I come from a place of privilege. I didn't know that before, but reflecting on today, I come from a place of privilege. You did joke about how I ran away from the law, which is true. I left Ghana, went to the States, kind of with a privileged background, went to the States, started everything on my own. After I realized that I wanted to be a lawyer, in the practice of law, I realized that I became a minority. So it was a flip. I came from a place of privilege and a place of power. Went to the States and lost a bit of the privilege, lost a bit of the power. But what I did during my practice was I realized how representation was key. Whenever I was always before a judge, I always wore a Ghanaian bow tie to show where I came from. And I did that to put a message across. Same thing today. My bow tie has my daughter's favorite colors. One is pink, one is blue. And so what, to me, a male ally should do is, number one, like we said, walk the walk, talk the talk, everything you do, advocate for gender equality, but make sure that you have visual representation of what you preach. So we have these 4 things behind us. You have to make sure that as a male ally, you do not, and I emphasize, do not be someone that sexual harasses. You have to make sure that you live your life with a point of integrity so that when you are talking about gender equality, you're talking about issues like this, no one can ever question you and say, oh, you're a hypocrite. And that's how I see it. But like I said, visual representation is key. I want to do this in such a way that I make an impact to society, I make an impact to my daughters, I make an impact to the positive females that look up to me.
Oh. Thank you, Edem. I hope that inspires others. Adelaide, supposing all the men in this room pledged to do everything in their power as we have asked them to do, what would that entail?
Well, that's a billion-dollar question. I think there are a number of key aspects, and I have to start off by saying that there are a lot of male allies, so this is not a he versus she conversation. We're not here to do a bashing of men. They are doing very well. I myself am a product of the generosity of a string of male allies, my father of blessed memory, my teachers, my pupil masters, as they were called back in the day when I qualified at the English bar, who extended a hand, who gave me opportunities I didn't even think were possible. So it's fantastic. We are surrounded by them, but we could do a lot more. And I think it's very important at the outset to realize that male allyship is a journey, not a destination. We're all learning from each other, and it's about opening yourself up to it. So if I've been asked to give us a bit of a checklist, then I'll do that and do justice to my female colleagues here. I think the starting point is listening and fostering empathy. Many a time, our male allies, with the best of intentions, of course, are very keen to fix the problem. So they are not very good at listening, but there's a problem, and then it has to be fixed. But what I would say is it's very important to take a step back as a male ally and listen to the perspectives of your female colleagues, their concerns, their stories, their accounts, with an open mind. Because it's only by listening and genuinely feeling like you've been listened to that the trust can be built, and then you start on that partnership journey. Because women do not want to be saved. We are not damsels in distress. We simply want to be supported on this gender equality journey so that our expertise speaks for itself, not our gender. So a male ally typically would have to start from ground one and listen to women. And once you have listened and you have an understanding of what the issues are, it's important that you as the male ally lead that effort to develop that gender acumen in the workplace. And how can you do that? By educating yourself. You need to educate yourself. I mean, the good thing is you can now start with the gender equality and law model policy, right? Have a read through, educate yourself at every level. It's amazing how much material is out there these days about gender equality, gender inequity. So once you've educated yourself and you now believe in what you're doing, you now need to take action. You need to take action in the workplace, in the home. And one way of taking action in the workplace is trying to steer that conversation to reflect women's perspectives. And that can happen in so many ways, like policy reform, making sure that it's collective decision-making, taking into account the female perspectives as well. But we don't just want male allies, we want male advocates, because that's when the action really starts. How are you going to be an advocate? It's very good avoiding inappropriate behavior and the like, but it's more about making sure that you're taking a firm stand and advancing the women, the female colleagues that you're surrounded by. There's so many examples. You need to do this tangibly with specificity. If you look at our profession, certainly in Ghana, we churn out a number of female lawyers year in, year out. But somewhere along the line, there's an attrition. And why is that? Why is there an attrition? Why is it that of course, our wonderful Chief Justice is here, but in between, why is it that in the highest echelons of a profession, the women are missing? One has to go back to the enthusiasm in which they enter the profession. As women, we go through a lot of changes. We might be called to the bar, we'll start a year or two, we might get married, we'll have children, and the rest follows. Now, do we have policies, or the male allyship in leadership, have they steered the policies to ensure that women feel supported, that they can re-enter this profession and be supported? Those are the tangibles that I'm talking about. And when they do enter the profession, are there policies to ensure that they are being looked after? It's not about holding their hand, but it's about supporting them. For example, in the workplace, some women might have children and decide that they don't want to come back. Now, that's a choice. But career-driven women who have children will come back. And before they come back, they don't take that decision lightly. They come back and they do everything within their power. I would say my personal experience, talking from our firm, our personal experience is that women who come back from childbirth are driven, they are focused, and don't do anything by halves, right? So why would you not promote such a woman? Why would you shy away from promoting that woman because she is married with kids or she will have kids eventually. You need to target that talent for the betterment of your firm. You need to make sure that as a male ally, you're supporting that woman, you're mentoring that woman. And it doesn't stop with mentoring. It's not, or lip service. It's about making sure that you're providing opportunities for that woman because she's a star. You are investing in that woman. So it's very important that we don't say that women are allowed in the workplace, come back from maternity leave, but everybody has their story. Everybody has their intersectional challenge. And it's about time that we stop measuring the matrix of success by just looking at financial value. You need to look at that individual and the social value they bring to the table. So if, for example, you're a male colleague and you've got a female colleague who, for example, you look at a particular role and that equally competent female colleague has missed the chance of promotion 3 times in a row, a true male ally will identify that female colleague, support and mentor her so that when we come back to the next round of promotions, she is ready. Now, that's what a true male ally would do. I would say also that some male allies would say, finally, some male allies would say that, they are not in positions of power, they don't know what to do, they are not the leaders, and fold their arms. Well, nobody's off the hook. As a male ally, you should have a zero-tolerance approach. And what I mean is you should be in a position to call out other male allies for inappropriate behavior, casual sexist remarks. You're able to call them out for things like, dismissing a female colleague, cutting out a female colleague in submissions in a meeting, things like that. And what's worse, taking a female's idea, which originates from the female, repackaging it and churn it out as yours. So we've got work to do. And I just wanted to give you a sense of the things we can tangibly do. And we've heard today that diversity and inclusion is key. What I'll say is this new evolution of inclusive leadership is here to stay. The younger men, the younger generation are empathetic to their female colleagues because they've heard stories from their wives, their girlfriends, their sisters about workplace challenges. And they are no longer going to sit in discomfort. They are ready to change the dynamic. So as a male ally, these are some of the things that women would like to see in the workplace.
Thank you, Adelaide. I hope you took notes. And if you forget nothing, if you remember nothing else, remember not to call your female colleague sweetheart. They're not dating you. So male allies, do remember that. Even if you don't feel up to going up to the CEO and say, hey, why didn't you promote this other person? At least you cannot be calling women who have earned their place in your firm sweetheart. David, how do you think men can leverage their privilege within the systems to support the gender cause and to bring on more male allies?
So I teach at the law school, and I compare the gender distribution in the class to what it was when I was in the law school, which used to be very male dominant. And now it's either equal or the female are actually more. Now, that is the reality of society. Incidentally, many and a large number of law firms have male founders. And therefore, they are in that privileged position. And they are the ones who cause the sexual harassment and things of that, like want to demand sex in the exchange of employment and all that. So those are the kind of things that Adelaide has talked about a lot. But there are a few things we don't emphasize enough. And that's one of the reasons I like this campaign. There are 2 things on the board that I think we must take much more seriously, which has to do, and it's not because the others are less, but because the others have been talked about very much. One is promotion, equal access to promotion. The other one is equal pay. Now let me explain. I can bet you 80% of law firms around Africa don't have any criteria for promotion. And therefore, even when the female feels discriminated against, there's no criteria by which she can benchmark that this is the criteria being used, and therefore you promoted a male as against me. Now, if you are in the public service, like our leadership or Miss Edu, you may not recognize that very easily because in that system, scheme of service exists. But in the private sector, the promotion is in the minds of the founder. And as somebody puts it, you don't know the basis for the promotion. It is like the peace of the Lord. It passeth all understanding. So it is important we get male founders to adopt clear criteria by which a female advocate or a male advocate can judge. The other thing we need to look at has to do also with equal pay. Because if there is no scheme of service, if there are no criteria by which you pay people, there's no bandwidth for promotion, which is actually part of the campaign. How do I know that I am not in the right band? So I think we need to emphasize a lot of those things. The other thing that we need to look at much more also has to do with creating the environment which is more friendly in a practical way. Now, and I like to use AB and David as an example. We actually allow females who have had kids to bring the kids to the office after 2 o'clock when they go and pick them. When we go on work retreat, you are allowed to bring help and we pay for it. These are practical ways that make females feel very comfortable and feel that you have a family-friendly environment.
Thank you. Law firm founders, please. See David in chambers for some tips on how to put your money where your mouth is. And finally, Edem, we're out of time, and it's a very interesting discussion, but we're out of time. So I'm going to ask Edem finally, how can men approach other men? Just 2 practical tips. How do you bring aboard a male ally?
I guess I'll use my own experience. You tend to see that men are sympathetic when you talk about their mothers, their wives, and their daughters. So that's an easy way to rope them in. You have them envision or picture how they would want their wives, their mothers, their daughters to be treated. And then you use that as a scenario and say, so with what you just did, would you do the same if the roles were reversed and your mom was in the shoes, your wife, your daughters? And to me, that seems to be an easy way to start the conversation. And you'd realize that although we are in a patriarchal society where men have, quote unquote, a chip on their shoulders, once you are able to use this as a starting point, the chip falls. And they are able to be empathetic, and they can then see where you are coming from. So for me, that's what I use.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I was nodding along because I remember a few years ago on my bar page, my bar year group page, somebody posted some tabloid article about how educated women are losing their husbands to their housekeepers because they know their rights. And then I remember asking him if his daughter was in school, how she was doing with her after-school classes. And then he commented, and I told him, you should pull her out. She might lose her husband to the help. After which he thought perhaps it's not just because they're educated, he said, there are other reasons. I said, that's the conversation we should have. Not simply that women are educated and know their rights, so they're losing their husbands to the help. So I think Edem's point about male allies finding it easier to think about the substance when they think of it and how it affects the women that they care about in their own lives, I think is very valid. Thank you for the points. Thank you for all of the guidance to David, Adelaide, and Edem.